I never thought the quiet suburban street I moved into would turn into a nightmare. My wife and I had been living in the house for a few months when we first noticed her, the old lady next door. She was always kind, always smiling, and she seemed harmless. Her house backed up against the woods, and in front, the road simply ended at the trees. It was peaceful until nightfall. Every night around 10 p.m., we'd hear faint rave music from her house. Not loud enough to call the police, but enough that we couldn't ignore it. It went on until about 1 a.m. We shrugged it off at first, thinking she was just an eccentric old lady enjoying her music. But after a few nights, curiosity got the best of us. One evening, my wife and I saw her outside doing something strange. She was planting what looked like strange, dark plants in her yard near the woods. We couldn't see clearly, but it looked unnatural, almost ritualistic. I joked, "Hey, old lady, you throwing a rave or planting some new dance floor?" When I said it, her face suddenly changed. That warm, friendly smile vanished. Her eyes turned cold, blank, and emotionless. She ignored us and went inside without a word. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. I had a strange feeling, like something was wrong. And then I saw her, standing at the foot of our bed, holding a knife. Her face was twisted into a crazed smile, eyes wide and unblinking. She swung the knife at the foot of the bed, almost as if she was trying to attack something invisible. My wife and I froze in terror, then managed to scramble into the bathroom and bar the door. My wife grabbed her phone and dialed. When the police arrived, they found her still pounding the bathroom door and screaming weird and random things. During the investigation, I told them about the nightly music. They found strange symbols carved into her yard, and the dark plants she was planting. They looked like some kind of ritualistic herbs or fungi. Later, I learned that she had been listening to rave music every night because she was trying to summon or communicate with something from the woods, a malevolent presence, an ancient entity that feeds on chaos and fear. The music, with its repetitive beats and distorted sounds, was her way of calling it, a ritual meant to keep whatever lurked in the forest at bay, or perhaps to invite it closer. The police couldn't explain the night she attacked us, but I believe she was trying to either conjure something or keep it from reaching her. That night, her mind snapped, and she lost control. We never heard her again after that night, and the house has been empty since. But I still hear faint echoes of that bass line sometimes, late at night. A haunting reminder of what she was trying to summon and what nearly took us.
This story happened a long time ago when I was in my late teens. I had recently got my first car, and I would always drive my friends and I around, usually to a bar called Frank's Bar that our friend Peter's father owned. It had pool tables and darts there, so that's where we hung out most of the time. One night, like most nights, I was driving some friends to the bar. During the drive, a man started driving close to my car, beeping his horn and trying to overtake me. One of my friends said to not let him over in order to annoy him. I didn't let him pass. My friends and I laughed at the man's frustration. For some reason, the man slammed on his brakes, nearly crashing into a barrier on the side of the road. We continued to laugh. Then we arrived at Frank's Bar. We had dinner, played pool, and had a few drinks. As Peter's dad owned the bar, we would always stay late past closing time. My other friends had left a little earlier that night, so it was just me and Peter. It was midnight when I decided it was time to head home. I said bye to Peter and his dad, and I left the bar. When I got outside, I expected my car to be the only one in the parking lot, but there was another car parked near mine. A man was standing outside his car, sipping on a liquor bottle, watching me. I knew right away it was the man that nearly ran off the road. I kept my head down, trying not to make any eye contact, and I got into my car. When I got in and started my car, so did the man. I drove off down the road, and so did the man following me close behind. I barely got down the road when the man started aggressively tailgating me. He drove up beside me, waving his hands at me. It looked like he wanted me to pull over. I wasn't going to, and I continued driving and looked away. The man started beeping his horn, and when I looked back at him, he was holding a handgun, pointing it right at me. My instinct was to drive faster, and the man accelerated as well. I saw my mirror, and the man somehow lost control of his car, causing him to swerve. I didn't see what exactly happened as I was focusing on the road, concentrating to driving fast and to get away from this guy. I didn't see that man again that night, and from then on, I always worried when I went back to Frank's Bar that I would see that man again. Thankfully, I never did.
2 years ago, something happened to me that still stands out as one of the most bizarre moments of my life. I wouldn't say it was scary, but it was definitely strange and very awkward. At the time, I was feeling a little lonely. I saw many of my friends getting into serious relationships, making plans for the future, talking about starting families. I realized that I wanted something like that too. So, I decided to try dating apps. I mean, why not? That's what everyone seemed to be doing. I signed up for a few of them just to see where it would take me. I did get quite a few matches, but most of them weren't really looking for the same thing I was, if you know what I mean. I wasn't looking for a perfect prince or anything unrealistic. I just wanted someone nice, someone I could talk to and maybe build something meaningful with. And then, I met someone who seemed exactly like that. For the sake of this story, I'll call him Jim. At the beginning, everything felt perfect. We talked for hours through messages before even mentioning meeting in person. Our conversations flowed easily, and we seemed to have a lot in common. Eventually, we decided to meet. Our first date was simple, coffee. It went great, so we met again for another coffee. Then, a few days later, we decided to have dinner together. That dinner turned out to be the weird one. We were sitting in a nice restaurant, having a glass of wine and talking comfortably. The conversation was going great, and I remember thinking to myself that this might actually turn into something serious. At one point, Jim told me he needed to use the restroom. He said he'd be right back. I smiled and told him no problem. While he was gone, I took out my phone and sent a quick message to my best friend, telling her that the date was going incredibly well and that Jim might actually be the one. I was genuinely happy in that moment. A couple of minutes later, Jim came back from the restroom, and that's when everything became unforgettable. Jim was now standing there in his underwear, just underwear, no pants, no explanation, nothing. For a moment, I couldn't move. It wasn't fear, it was pure embarrassment. I could feel everyone in the restaurant staring at our table. I remember thinking that if there had been a hole in the floor, I would have jumped into it immediately. The next few minutes are honestly a blur. I don't remember exactly what happened after that moment. I just remember standing up and quickly leaving the restaurant. Jim didn't try to explain anything. And honestly, at that point, I wasn't even sure I wanted to hear the explanation. Maybe something strange had happened in the restroom. Maybe he was sick. Maybe it was some kind of misunderstanding. I still don't know. Later that night, I blocked him on the app. After that experience, I decided I was completely done with dating apps. But here's the unexpected part of the story. After leaving the restaurant that night, I ordered an Uber to go home. I was still embarrassed and replaying the entire situation in my head. The driver was friendly and we started talking during the ride. It turned out we had a lot in common and the conversation felt surprisingly natural. We exchanged numbers before the ride ended, and believe it or not, the man who drove me home that night is now my boyfriend. So, in a strange way, I'm actually glad that dinner date didn't go well. And if Jim happened to be having some kind of bad day that night, I honestly wish him the best.
I'll keep this short. I had the strangest date of my life last week. I've been using dating apps for about 2 years. Not consistently, just hoping to eventually find someone and stop using them for good. Then I matched with a girl named Celia. We clicked instantly. The conversation felt easy, natural. So we decided to meet for lunch. Nothing fancy, just a small restaurant. When I got there, she was already waiting for me. We started talking, and it felt just like texting, effortless, comfortable. Honestly, it was going great, until it wasn't. Out of nowhere, she lifted one leg, leaned to the side, and let out the loudest fart I've ever heard. The entire restaurant went silent. Everyone turned to look at us, but that wasn't the worst part. She started laughing, not normal laughter. Her mouth stretched open, way too wide, wider than it should. It didn't look human. I didn't say a word. I just ran. I ran all the way home. I blocked her, deleted every dating app, and I'm never going back.
I had got home one night, and I was exhausted and completely forgot about the wooden planks my landlord had installed on my windows for security. Around 4 a.m., I was jolted awake by loud, violent, and deliberate banging on my windows. I'm an extremely heavy sleeper, so the fact that I woke up at all still feels like a miracle. When I looked toward the window, I realized 2 men were outside, trying to force it open while yelling disgusting threats about what they planned to do to me. As they pushed and pulled, growing angrier, the window finally opened, but only partially. The wooden plank stopped it before opening all the way. Because of that plank, only half of one man's foot made it through the opening into my apartment. They kept trying to force the window wider, but the plank held firm. Seeing that foot inside my bedroom made everything feel unreal. I remember thinking that if the plank hadn't been there, they would have gotten inside while I was asleep, and I would have been completely defenseless. I immediately called the police. The man fled before they arrived. Officers came and took my statement, and later I learned the men were found. I chose not to press charges as I didn't feel capable of going through that process. I moved out within a week to a safer apartment building. Looking back, there were red flags I didn't recognize at the time. On several occasions, strangers approached me in the parking lot and asked about my boyfriend when he visited, and whether he was there on weekends. I realize now they were trying to figure out when I was alone. Another time, I walked into the laundry room and found a man sitting in the dark, just staring at me. After the attack, I realized he looked like the one man from that night. Ironically, I was working as a crisis counselor at the time. My job was literally to support survivors of violence, but my own sheltered upbringing made me slow to recognize the danger I was in. That morning, I had been angry about the wooden planks. That night, they actually saved my life. So this story began on a late 90s summer night in El Paso, under a heat so thick that it seeped into the adobe walls. A church block party was ending and a man slipped away from the crowd unnoticed. He followed my family home. The house was alive with its usual rhythm. Grandparents in their recliners, aunts on the couch, and the television was just murmuring. Everything was locked and sealed against the oven like the breath of a desert night. 10 minutes later, a soft, almost polite knock came at my door. My aunt opened it. A man stepped inside without an invitation, smiling an easy, wide smile that didn't feel right. He said, "Hi guys." Manny just wanted me to stop by and say hi. Everyone knew Manny. He was my dad. The name was a key turning in the lock, and for a brief moment, everyone's guard dropped. When my grandfather finally asked who he was, the man didn't answer. He just stood there, his eyes drifting slowly across the living room, memorizing every detail as if he was taking inventory. "You need to leave," my grandfather said, his voice steady but edged. The man turned and walked out. A tense, listening silence settled over the house. Then the banging began, the front door shuddered in its frame as a knob twisted and rattled. "Is this how you treat family?" A loud, furious voice shouted through the wood. And then the voice changed. It slowed, deepened, and thickened, as if something heavy were uncoiling in a throat that was no longer entirely human. "Let me in," it said, calm, measured, almost gentle. "It's cold and rainy out here." The night sky was perfectly clear. "Come outside so I can carve your hearts out." "Show me your flesh. This is my domain." He repeated the word domain slowly, reverently, like a twisted prayer. He circled to the bedroom window where my grandfather was sitting and began pounding on the glass. A crack spiderwebbed outward before the window shattered. My grandfather bolted outside and picked up a rusted pipe from the yard. He swung it once, but the man was faster. The dull thunk of metal on bone echoed in the night. There was blood beneath my grandfather's eye, and he staggered back inside. He said, "Call the police." My grandmother froze, and she said, "Let's just see what happens." Outside, the man circled the house, his footsteps deliberate, his low voice still claiming his domain. Panic finally broke the spell, and my family spilled out into the street, pounding on neighbors' doors. The man walked back into the empty house. He opened the refrigerator and ate the leftovers straight from the foil. He drank from the milk jug. He jumped on the beds, spat on the mirrors, and touched everything, claiming it is all his. When the police arrived, they approached him like he was just a man, but he wasn't. He swung the pipe again, taking 2 officers down before 4 more could wrestle him down to the ground. All the while, his low voice kept murmuring, unhurried and certain. Years later, they said it was drugs, PCP or meth, something that burns the person away and leaves only a furnace of limitless strength and delusion. But in the retelling, it never quite settles on chemicals alone. Even now, my family checks the locks twice, glances at the windows after dark, and still hears, in the back of their minds, that calm, thickened voice repeating the word that never quite left them, and they kept hearing, domain. This is one of those stories that happened in my family that they just continue to tell throughout the years.
I have been suffering from something I can't really explain, something I haven't found a solution for, and honestly, I don't know who I could even talk to about it. About a month ago, I fell asleep on the couch while watching television. That's normal for me. I get home tired from work, have dinner, and then unwind for a bit. Falling asleep there has become part of my routine. I do have a girlfriend, but we don't live together yet. And after what's been happening, I'm not sure she would want to. She doesn't know about any of this. I haven't told her. But eventually, I'll have to. Anyway, that night was like any other. I woke up on the couch around midnight and dragged myself to bed. The apartment was quiet. I remember barely making it under the covers before instantly falling asleep again. Then, around 2 a.m., I woke up. At least, I think I did. I couldn't move. I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't lift my arms. I couldn't even turn my head. The only thing I could move were my eyes. It felt like I was trapped inside my own body. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself this had to be some kind of sleep issue. Then I looked toward the corner of the room, next to my closet, and I saw something. It wasn't clear. It wasn't detailed. Just a darker shape against the darkness, like a person standing still. It didn't move, but it was there. My heart started pounding so loudly I was sure I would wake myself up. I remember thinking, is someone in my apartment? Had I locked the door? Was I imagining this? I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to sit up, but nothing responded. I just stared at it. After what felt like several minutes, I blinked, and it was gone. At the exact same moment I could move again, I shot up in bed, turned on the lamp, and scanned the room. Nothing. The closet door was closed. The corner was empty. I checked the entire apartment. Everything was locked. I barely slept the rest of that night. The next morning, I convinced myself it was sleep paralysis. I looked it up online, and the symptoms matched almost perfectly. Inability to move, hallucinations, shadow figures. It made sense. For a few days, nothing happened again. Then, it happened a second time. Same routine. Fell asleep on the couch, Went to bed. Woke up around 2 a.m., frozen. This time, I didn't look at the corner right away. I didn't want to. But eventually, my eyes drifted there, and it was back. Same shape, same place. Standing beside the closet, watching me. It felt closer somehow. Not physically closer, just more defined. Again, it didn't move. It just stood there. And again, after a few minutes, it disappeared the moment I regained control of my body. That's when I started changing things. I stopped sleeping on the couch. I made sure to go to bed fully awake. I left a lamp on at night. I even started playing quiet music in the background, thinking maybe silence was triggering something in my brain. For a week, nothing happened. I almost felt relieved, until 3 nights ago. I woke up again, 2:03 a.m., frozen. But this time, I wasn't lying on my back. I was facing the wall. I couldn't see the closet corner, and I felt something I hadn't felt before, the sensation that I wasn't alone behind me. You know when someone stands too close and you can feel their presence without touching you? That's what it felt like. My entire body was tense, but I couldn't move. Slowly, with just my eyes, I tried to look toward the reflection in the television screen across the room. The television was off, but the black screen reflected part of the bedroom, and in that reflection, I saw it. Closer than before, not in the corner, standing right next to my bed, facing me. I couldn't make out features, just a tall outline. Still, silent, waiting. I don't know how long it stayed there, but this time, when I regained control, it didn't disappear immediately. I felt the mattress shift slightly, like weight being lifted from it. Then it was gone. I turned on every light in the apartment. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, I checked the side of the bed. There was nothing unusual, except the indentation on the mattress, on my side, like someone had been standing there for a while. Here's the part I haven't told anyone. Last night, I didn't fall asleep on the couch. I didn't even feel that tired. I went to bed fully awake. I remember staring at the ceiling, wide awake, no dreams, no drifting. And at exactly 2:03 a.m., without warning, I couldn't move, which means whatever this is, it's not waiting for me to fall asleep anymore. So, 2 years ago, something happened to me that still echoes in my life today. I still have bad dreams about it. I'll keep personal details hidden and I won't reveal where this took place. Like I was saying, until 2 years ago, I used to kayak alone at night in a nearby lake. The location was pretty hidden. It wasn't popular, but a few locals knew about it. Most of the time you could find it completely empty, especially at night. That was actually my favorite time to go on this particular night. Something happened that made me never go back into a boat, a lake, or open water again. I followed my usual routine. I parked a bit away, carried my kayak down a narrow path. It wasn't very heavy, and placed it gently into the water. The night was calm. There was some fog, not too thick, but enough to blur the shoreline. That never bothered me before. The lake wasn't huge. Even with fog, you could always spot the darker line of trees around the edges. At least, that's what I thought. I'd been paddling for maybe 15 minutes when I noticed something strange. Along the shoreline, through the fog, I could see what looked like people. Shadows. Several of them. They were spaced apart from each other, standing still, facing the water. At first, I assumed it was a group of night fishermen, or maybe friends hanging out quietly. It was unusual, but not impossible. What made me uncomfortable wasn't their presence. It was how still they were. No one moved, no one shifted, no one used a flashlight, just tall, dark outlines against the fog. I stopped paddling and let the kayak drift. I remember thinking that maybe the fog was playing tricks on my eyes. Depth perception gets strange at night on water. Shapes stretch, shadows double. So I blinked. I rubbed my eyes. They were still there. And then I realized something else. The spacing between them was too even, like they had measured the distance. I felt a small wave of unease, but told myself I was overthinking. I dipped my paddle back into the water and turned slightly, just to change my angle and confirm what I was seeing. That's when it happened. The shoreline shifted, not physically, but the perspective changed in a way that didn't make sense. The figures that had been on my left were now directly in front of me. I hadn't turned that much. I froze. The fog thickened slightly, rolling across the surface of the water like slow smoke. And then I noticed something that made my chest tighten. There was no sound, no insects, no water against rocks. Not even the distant hum of wind in trees. The lake was completely silent. Even my paddle entering the water sounded muted. I suddenly felt exposed, like I wasn't observing them. They were observing me. I decided it was time to head back. Slowly, calmly, I began paddling toward where I believed the shore was. But after a minute, I realized something was wrong. The tree line wasn't getting closer. It looked exactly the same. The silhouettes were still there. Same distance, same spacing. My breathing got heavier. I tried paddling harder, this time aiming toward a darker patch that I was sure was the exit point. Nothing changed. The fog seemed to stretch the lake endlessly. Then, one of the figures moved. Not a step, not an arm. It simply shifted closer to the waterline. And then another did the same. No splashes, no footsteps, just a subtle change in position. That was the moment panic hit me. I turned the kayak sharply and started paddling in the opposite direction, hard. The water beneath me felt thicker, heavier, like I was dragging through resistance. I didn't look back. I just kept paddling. After what felt like several minutes, my paddle suddenly hit something solid. Sand. I had reached shore. I jumped out without even pulling the kayak fully up. My shoes sank slightly into wet ground. I stumbled forward through the fog until I reached the tree line. When I finally turned around, the lake looked normal, empty, no silhouettes, no movement, just fog slowly lifting from still water. I stood there for a long time, trying to steady my breathing. I told myself it was an illusion, fog distortion, light refraction, my imagination mixing with darkness. But then I noticed something that I still can't explain. My kayak was not where I had left it. It was pulled halfway onto the shore, much farther than where I had stepped out, as if someone had dragged it up for me. I was alone. I know I was alone. I didn't sleep that night, and I've never gone back. Even now, whenever I'm near open water at night, I get this strange feeling. Like I'm being measured, like something is standing at an equal distance from me, waiting.
When I was about 10 or 12, I don't really remember, but I had an odd experience. At the time, I was sharing a room with my sister. We had lofted beds, and I slept on the top bunk. We had this stereo. When you would press the button and turn it on, it would click and a red light would come on. Our beds were on one side of the room, and the stereo was on a desk on the opposite side. One night I was woken up by the click sound that the stereo makes when the power button is pressed. I recognized the sound and I sat up in bed. I looked over at the stereo and the light was actually on. I look over at my sister and she is fast asleep. Her bed is under mine but perpendicular, so I could see the top half of her from my bed. The stereo is playing with the white noise sound. Suddenly I can hear someone saying, "Away," coming from the stereo. Just one word, away. First, it starts off soft and gradually gets louder until it becomes a yell. Away, away, away. It took about 10 to 15 seconds probably to build up to that yell, and then it died back down to a whisper. I thought this was a dream. I was frozen out of fear, and I thought this had to be my imagination, and I tried telling myself that during the whole time. I had almost convinced myself of it until it stopped. After the voice died away, the stereo went back to static. Then I heard the familiar click, and the light turned off. I was positive I wasn't dreaming the ending click. I stared at the stereo for a few more moments, and I was too freaked out to move. I looked back at my sister, and I saw that she was still asleep, and finally I laid back in bed, covered myself in my sheets, and I willed myself back to sleep. I consider myself a rational person, but I had no rational explanation for this. This is the freakiest shit that has ever happened to me. This story is about my friend and her 6-year-old son. One day, she brought a new phone. When she came home from work, she started cooking dinner and left her phone down on the kitchen table. Her son came into the kitchen and saw the phone. He asked his mother if he could play with it, and she actually told him yeah, as long as he did not call anyone or delete any text messages. So of course the boy agreed and went off to his bedroom, well actually his mother's bedroom, to play with the phone. Around 10 p.m. that night, she went upstairs to tuck him in, and she found him fast asleep on the bed. The new phone was lying on the ground beside the bed. She picked it up and began browsing through the settings to make sure he had not deleted anything. She noticed some minor changes. He had changed the theme, the background, and had given her a new ringtone. She noticed that he had taken some pictures with the phone. She opened the images folder and browsed through the phone. How cute, she thought. He had been taking selfies. Then she came across the last photo in the folder. When she first saw it, she couldn't quite believe it. Were her eyes playing tricks on her? It was a photograph of her son lying asleep on her bed. But the disturbing thing was that there was someone lurking in the far left corner of the picture. It seemed to show the left side of a creepy old woman's face. Until this day, her son could never answer the question about who that woman was and how she got in there.
I have been suffering from something I can't really explain, something I haven't found a solution for, and honestly, I don't know who I could even talk to about it. About a month ago, I fell asleep on the couch while watching television. That's normal for me. I get home tired from work, have dinner, and then unwind for a bit. Falling asleep there has become part of my routine. I do have a girlfriend, but we don't live together yet. And after what's been happening, I'm not sure she would want to. She doesn't know about any of this. I haven't told her. But eventually, I'll have to. Anyway, that night was like any other. I woke up on the couch around midnight and dragged myself to bed. The apartment was quiet. I remember barely making it under the covers before instantly falling asleep again. Then, around 2 a.m., I woke up. At least, I think I did. I couldn't move. I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't lift my arms. I couldn't even turn my head. The only thing I could move were my eyes. It felt like I was trapped inside my own body. At first, I thought I was still dreaming. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself this had to be some kind of sleep issue. Then I looked toward the corner of the room, next to my closet, and I saw something. It wasn't clear. It wasn't detailed. Just a darker shape against the darkness, like a person standing still. It didn't move, but it was there. My heart started pounding so loudly I was sure I would wake myself up. I remember thinking, is someone in my apartment? Had I locked the door? Was I imagining this? I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I tried to sit up, but nothing responded. I just stared at it. After what felt like several minutes, I blinked, and it was gone. At the exact same moment I could move again, I shot up in bed, turned on the lamp, and scanned the room. Nothing. The closet door was closed. The corner was empty. I checked the entire apartment. Everything was locked. I barely slept the rest of that night. The next morning, I convinced myself it was sleep paralysis. I looked it up online, and the symptoms matched almost perfectly. Inability to move, hallucinations, shadow figures. It made sense. For a few days, nothing happened again. Then, it happened a second time. Same routine. Fell asleep on the couch, went to bed, woke up around 2 a.m., frozen. This time, I didn't look at the corner right away. I didn't want to. But eventually, my eyes drifted there, and it was back. Same shape, same place, standing beside the closet, watching me. It felt closer somehow. Not physically closer, just more defined. Again, it didn't move. It just stood there. And again, after a few minutes, it disappeared the moment I regained control of my body. That's when I started changing things. I stopped sleeping on the couch. I made sure to go to bed fully awake. I left a lamp on at night. I even started playing quiet music in the background, thinking maybe silence was triggering something in my brain. For a week, nothing happened. I almost felt relieved, until 3 nights ago. I woke up again, 2:03 a.m., frozen. But this time, I wasn't lying on my back. I was facing the wall. I couldn't see the closet corner, and I felt something I hadn't felt before, the sensation that I wasn't alone behind me. You know when someone stands too close and you can feel their presence without touching you? That's what it felt like. My entire body was tense, but I couldn't move. Slowly, with just my eyes, I tried to look toward the reflection in the television screen across the room. The television was off, but the black screen reflected part of the bedroom, and in that reflection, I saw it. Closer than before, not in the corner, standing right next to my bed, facing me. I couldn't make out features, just a tall outline. Still, silent, waiting. I don't know how long it stayed there, but this time, when I regained control, it didn't disappear immediately. I felt the mattress shift slightly, like weight being lifted from it. Then it was gone. I turned on every light in the apartment. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, I checked the side of the bed. There was nothing unusual, except the indentation on the mattress, on my side, like someone had been standing there for a while. Here's the part I haven't told anyone. Last night, I didn't fall asleep on the couch. I didn't even feel that tired. I went to bed fully awake. I remember staring at the ceiling, wide awake, no dreams, no drifting. And at exactly 2:03 a.m., without warning, I couldn't move, which means whatever this is, it's not waiting for me to fall asleep anymore.
When I was 11 years old, I spent the night hanging out with my closest friend at the time. I left around 7 o'clock. He was about 15 to 20 minute walk away from my house. It was the month of December, so it was icy and dark outside. While I was walking down the long sidewalk, I had to make a turn halfway. Across the turn down the sidewalk, I noticed a man way further down. He was alone at the moment. 10 seconds later, a 4-door car drove up to him. It was a long street till my turn, so I watched him talk to whoever it was in the car. It sped off, and he just stopped, watching me as I walked. As I kept walking, all I heard was, "Hey you, come here, stop." "Hey, you." So I freaked out. I started walking faster and then noticed he started running toward me. I started running for my life. Since the ground was covered in snow and ice, all I literally thought was, "Please, God, don't let me slip." I was crying and I was running. He caught up extremely fast. I kept looking back and noticed the car slowly driving behind him. As I ran, I felt his arm reach out and try to grab the hood of my sweatshirt. By God's grace, his hand slipped, and I ran a block trying to find a house with the lights on. I finally found one and banged at the door, almost ready to break it down. This older couple finally answered, and I ran inside explaining what happened. The husband then went outside to try to find him. When he went out, he saw the man standing at the end of the street staring at him. Then he ran off. My mom called the police and pulled me out of school for 4 days afterward, and this guy was never found. For a while after, I would buy flowers and a card and leave it on the couple's step, thanking them for saving my life. God only knows what would have happened if he got me and dragged me to the car.